Hi, I'm Ed, and this is Ed Talk Today. You might have already selected your specific business for your entrepreneurial experience, and that's a good thing. I wish you the best of luck. However, today I'm just going to brainstorm some thoughts on what small businesses I think make good startups and why I feel this way and make some suggestions. And also, I want to mention some businesses that I certainly would avoid and the reasons why. And I'm here to encourage, not discourage. So I'm just sharing my thoughts based on my own experience, but you need to be your own pilot here. So let's get into it. Tight into it? Teleprompter glitch. I'm sorry. Probably the best businesses to start are the ones in which you're working now. One you have day-to-day experience in. You should already know how this business makes money, what are its challenges. You've learned the ropes on someone else's dime maybe, and you think you could do it at least as well or better on your own and make more money. So that's really a no-brainer. That's what I did. When I left my job working for someone else, I felt I was at the top of my game in that field. I knew what it took to make that business profitable, and I thought I knew more than those around me. Please pardon me for that, but it was mainly true. I had to deal with a non-compete agreement and some harassment from my previous employer, but I wasn't deterred, and it all worked out very well. Another along sort of the same lines is buying the business you've been working in. Buying out your partner is really not becoming an entrepreneur in the truest sense. However, like the first example, you know the business. You know what makes it tick. You probably think you know more than the boss, right? I sold my first business to a subordinate for a handsome sum. This person was chomping at the bit to buy me out, and that's always a good spot to be in. So I took my chips off the table. I wrote the sales agreement myself with my stipulations, and the help of a top-notch lawyer, and was on my way to the bank. And to their credit, they remained successful in continuing with the fine business I had established. The downside to this is that it required a lot of capital to buy my business. And that brings us to one of my major suggestions. If I were starting a business today, I would focus on businesses that required small amounts of capital, or reasonable amounts of capital. Use your own money if you can. Debt can kill a new business. We'll talk about more on this later in the types of businesses to avoid. So, and this is key, personal services or business service businesses, especially ones with recurring revenue streams, or on the other hand, large lump sum fees with high margins, I think are good businesses. Staying away from businesses that require a lot of upfront money or taking on debt, probably not so much. So let's talk about some examples. Consulting in your area of expertise is probably, broadly speaking, my best single suggestion. It encompasses everything we just talked about. You know the business, you're an expert, you likely have connections, and frankly, in a lot of cases, you could start this business with a minimal investment. A laptop, a phone, and a nice suit of clothes. Little startup money, just some guts and fire in the belly. Some businesses, there are many, but I'll name some businesses that kind of roughly fall into this category. Things like HR consulting. HR consulting for businesses that aren't big enough to have their own HR department. If you're an expert in HR, hey, think about that. Executive search, bookkeeping and accounting services. Go on your own. Or this one, it's kind of a takeoff on that one at a higher level, even fractional CFO services, where you provide maybe a full range of higher level financial and accounting services to companies. Companies perhaps too small to hire their own CFOs. I know some folks who act as sort of a part-time CFO to several different companies at one time. It's a nice little business. And how about this one? IT support. Perhaps that wired home technician business that I referred to in an earlier video. Someone that could solve all sorts of home or in-office technical issues. Computers, routers, entertainment systems, security systems, cameras, and so on. If you have this skill set, I think there's a demand out there, and it's growing. It's got little, if any, inventory, low capital business. And as you build your client base, bring on more employees, or better yet, partners. Or start out partnering with another person who has similar skills right from the beginning in order to provide dependable coverage. I personally think this is one standout business opportunity. And if you have the skills, you'd go places fast. My suggestion on this business is to be sure you're charging reasonable but rather high fees. Test the market. Suggestion, try to sign up 24/7 support and maybe involve a subscription deal. Something like, we're on call 24/7 for our subscribers. Trust me, there are a lot of folks out there that can't keep up with today's technology. See, I've just given you the start on a business plan. I'll be your first customer. And by the way, a word about fees in general. I generally have taken the approach that I would rather have 20 good clients that were pleased to pay me a reasonable, generous fee for good work than 100 clients who were looking for a bargain. In general, cheapskate clients aren't worth the hassle. Do quality work for your core customers at top rates. Let other people handle the cheapskates. You'll make more money, you'll get good reviews, and at the end of the day, you'll have more pride in the quality of the work you do. Here's some other ideas. Those with teaching backgrounds could start tutoring businesses and grow them into specialty learning centers. Maybe even branch out, franchise, and so on. Think about that. Career coaching. Oftentimes, folks need some guidance, coaching, and interpersonal tools to make them more marketable. If you have a background in HR, training, or other relevant fields, this is one worth considering. I know a woman who started out this way, charging a modest fee for helping those that, while they had credentials, couldn't seem to get into a career commensurate with those credentials. And as this part of her business became successful, a one-on-one, she also began taking on corporate clients. This is where she really took off. Corporations reducing their workforce, and as part of the separation agreements, those companies would pay her to, say, provide 3 to 6 months of career coaching, maybe a temporary office, and other tools. This woman signed up for some large corporations and made a small fortune in this business. So these are just some ideas, some food for thought. And let's definitely not forget the trades. Plumbers who strike out on their own, like my plumber, who's running several crews, making $750,000 a year in his own business. And the list is long, but people like HVAC technicians, landscapers, building inspectors, and so on. These businesses are just some examples of low capital cost businesses that seem to me to be in high demand, relatively easy to start, and are scalable. It's no way a complete list. Fact is, for many of these types of businesses, you could expand by adding employees, expand geographically, or eventually franchise them. But notice this, all these businesses have some things in common. Low capital, scalability, and you're selling your knowledge, not products. That is, in my opinion, a winning formula. So does your business fit into any of these categories? Drop me a note. I'm curious. Now, for some businesses I would avoid, even with your money. I don't know about that, but in most cases, I'm not saying that the following businesses cannot be good businesses. They just fail to meet my requirements for small businesses. But depending on your expertise, your funding, and other factors, they could be suitable for you. They're just not for me. So I guess think hard about these businesses is my message to you. And number one on my list here is the restaurant business. Yep, I know you're a passionate chef. You're a culinary artist. But before jumping into your own restaurant business, consider very high startup costs, kind of like building a house, perishable inventory, staffing and employment issues and payroll. And I dare say that employees make or break your business, especially in a restaurant business. And the razor-thin margins and long owner-operator working hours. But moreover, the high failure rate. Industry studies show that well over half of new restaurants are out of business within 3 years. As for me, I'd rather eat out at some nice restaurant than own one. For that matter, I would avoid any small business that requires a high capital investment, whether it be in machinery, equipment, large inventories. That may work for some, specifically those who already have a foothold in that business as we discussed, but there's just too much capital risk required for my risk tolerance. And a lot of it's generally in the form of debt. Okay, franchises. Now remember this about franchises. Most of the money made in the franchisee-franchisor relationship is made by the franchisor. It's their idea. It's their contract you must agree to. Many, if not all of these terms weigh heavily in favor of the franchisor. In an earlier video of mine, I mentioned my friend who was elated to finally sell his 6 franchised restaurants. He once told me that he was overworked, underpaid, and felt as though using his own capital, it seemed as though he had merely paid good money to buy himself a job. I'm going to discuss franchising in greater detail in an upcoming episode of Ed Talk Today. Stay tuned. In multi-level marketing, and forgive me for even bringing this up, I know my viewers are too astute and enlightened to seriously entertain that idea. Suffice to say that these are, in my opinion, all about recruiting new members, buying products for your inventory and recruiting new members. Statistics indicate that only about 1% of these folks ever make a real profit. So, entrepreneurs, that's what I have for you today. I'm open to any questions or comments. If there's more on this topic or other topics you'd like me to address, please drop a note in the comment section. Other topics that are already in the queue are more about franchises, as I mentioned, taxes for small businesses. And here's one: employees, how to hire, train, and retain your best assets, and more. So please subscribe and ring the bell so you'll know when the next episode drops. And I'll see you next time on Ed Talk Today.